Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maxine. I have Avoidant Personality Disorder and ADHD. And today I want to talk about how a mental illness or disorder like Avoidant Personality Disorder can influence our physical health, because I feel like nobody is talking about that. I feel like a lot of people invalidate mental illness because it's all in your head. It's not like a tangible experience. But that's not necessarily true. I think really any mental disorder has the capacity to greatly impact your physical health, and especially something like AVPD it's a personality disorder, but it's essentially an anxiety disorder, or at least it kind of has to be hand in hand with an anxiety disorder. On the last video where I talked about narcissism, somebody commented and said that they tend to sort of equate it more to like a phobia, which I thought was a really good point, because it is like an extreme anxiety, fear sort of response. But yeah, so when I started thinking about this just a few days ago, there was really kind of one main point where I felt like having avoidant personality disorder really impacted my physical health. But then the more that I thought about it, the more I realized that your mental and your physical health are really kind of, they're very intertwined. It's not really like you can clearly separate the two. So I came up with, I guess like 4 or 5 ways that avoidant personality disorder directly affects my physical health. So these might not apply to everyone. All of them might not apply to everyone. Maybe there are more that I'm missing. Please let me know. But I'm going to talk about how it affects my physical body. Starting with just the straight up physical symptoms of anxiety. So this is going to likely kind of manifest a little bit differently for everybody. Anybody that has, I think most of us with AVPD were probably diagnosed with some form of anxiety separate to this, probably like before. For me, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder at 14 or 15 years old, so before I even qualified to be diagnosed with a personality disorder. During that time, right before, as a teenager, right before I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, I was hospitalized for my heart because they thought I might have a heart problem because I had such an elevated heart rate all the time. I've had high blood pressure my whole life, and the elevated heart rate caused me to pretty much always be feverish. I experienced chronic fatigue. Panic attacks are actually a very physical experience. If you've ever had a panic attack, you know that is like very much happening in your body. And then it can also cause things like IBS or stomach problems if you feel your anxiety a lot in your stomach, which I also do. I feel very nauseous when I'm highly anxious. It can cause like muscle stiffness and soreness in your neck and your shoulders. It can cause TMJ, and it can also cause headaches. So, I mean, apart from like the sweating also and the shaking and whatever else, there are like very physical symptoms to having these high levels of anxiety that I think a lot of people tend to brush over. For me personally, it doesn't really matter whether or not I know cognitively that the anxiety that I'm feeling is unwarranted because I can't just will away the like nausea and like physical stress that I feel in that moment. Like that's still very distracting and very distressing to me, even if I know that like the mental anxiety doesn't make sense or isn't necessary. It's a very physical experience too. And things like high blood pressure, having chronic high blood pressure is like, it's dangerous for your health. So, that's something that you have to be taking kind of seriously. Another way that is pretty obvious that something like ABPD can affect your physical health are these unhealthy coping mechanisms that we adopt to help ourselves get through the feelings. So for me, I've spoken before that I really, really struggle with binge eating. Still to this day, I struggle with binge eating. It's an emotional thing. I eat emotionally and I overeat. I eat to the point where I feel physically sick a lot of the time. And obviously there are long-term health issues associated with chronic overeating. I don't subscribe to the idea that you have to look physically fit to have a healthy body. I think healthy bodies can look a multitude of different ways, but the habit, I know for me, the type of food that I eat and the amount that I eat is not healthy. It doesn't feel healthy. It doesn't feel good. As much as I eat, because I am eating purely to satisfy some sort of like dopamine response for emotional regulation, I'm not eating nutritious foods. So I'm actually probably, despite being overweight, probably very like nutritionally malnourished, because when I am volume eating comfort food to regulate my emotions, there's no more room for eating foods for nutritional purposes. But that's not even the only unhealthy coping mechanism that one can have. So there's obviously like substance use issues and alcoholism. Those are very, very common in those of us with ABPD because it helps to numb our emotions or, limit our social inhibitions. Am I saying that backwards? You know what I mean. And even things like doom scrolling, which I know most of us struggle with too. We're very isolated. We're sort of stuck in this like frozen state a lot of the time, and that can lead directly to like a very sedentary lifestyle. That's what's happened for me. That's also a very unhealthy aspect of my life. And some of us can experience things like self-harm or like inherently sort of risky behaviors to help regulate your anxiety. There are just so many different coping mechanisms for your mental state that have like direct physical consequences that can affect your physical health short-term and long-term. That I think a lot of people see those as being separate from the mental disorder itself. And, a lot of people, there's a stigma that people that overeat or overconsume alcohol or whatever it is are just doing that because they're, lazy or careless or, whatever XYZ, like whatever negative stereotype you want to put in there. but these are all directly related to your mental health and your mental state. So the next thing, this was kind of the first thing I thought of, and I've talked about this before, but if you are clinically avoidant, then you may struggle to make and arrive at regular appointments. So going to the dentist, going to the doctor, going to a counselor for your mental health, but we're talking about physical health now. So we, or at least me, I don't do those things unless I have no other choice, basically. And as many of you know, this has led to some really unfortunate physical consequences for me from putting off going to these appointments for years and years and years. There's not really that much more to say about that, but that is a symptom of our mental disorder that directly impacts our physical health, being unable or too fearful or too anxious to follow through on these important regular appointments that most people are doing without issue. And finally, the last two are kind of hand in hand with one another, but as I've spoken about before, a lot of us with avoidant personality disorder are also experiencing depression. Anxiety and depression go hand in hand. And the thing about being depressed is that it just makes it very difficult to take care of yourself. Sometimes it's hard to even put your finger on why it is so difficult. I feel that way sometimes when I'm laying in bed and I'm thinking it would take me 2 minutes to get up and go and brush my teeth right now before I close my eyes and go to sleep. But it can just feel impossible. And to go along with that, some of us with AVPD and depression and chronic low self-esteem might not feel that we are worth or worthy of good health or longevity or the positive, aspects of taking care of yourself. We might not feel like our existence is worth that effort. And so we don't take care of ourselves and we become as physically unhealthy as we are mentally unhealthy. And it's really a shame. It's really unfortunate. It makes me very sad. It makes me sad that I haven't taken good care of myself. I'm finally getting to an age now where I'm starting to feel those effects of being very careless with my health throughout my 20s. And it's interesting because as much regret as I have for not taking care of myself before, I'm still struggling just as much to try to get that together and do it now. It has not gotten any easier. I just sort of, I think about it more and I feel more stress about it, but that hasn't necessarily made it easier for me to do. So, I don't know. I felt like somebody needed to talk about this because we keep mental illness in such a separate category from all the physical illness because it's, there's no blood test you can take to tell you what your mental illness is, I guess. It's a lot more nuanced and confusing, but regardless of what your diagnosis is, being mentally unwell is sooner or later going to have physical consequences. And I just think that's something to be aware of and something to be taken more seriously, I guess. So that's all I had to say for this video. I don't know if that was helpful, but I'm sure some of you guys will be able to relate to what I'm saying. And I hope that somebody watches this someday that, maybe doesn't experience mental illness, that, it can kind of help change their perspective as far as what it means to be mentally ill, because it really is kind of an all-encompassing experience, and our mental health is truly just as important as our physical health. And if it's neglected, there are very real, tangible consequences to that. So thank you guys for watching. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. As always, the Discord and the Etsy store link will be in the description. And until next time, I love you guys. Goodbye.